Your real estate agent is like your advisor, your professional that's going to help you through the transaction. I mean, you can have all the data in the world, but it doesn't really tell the story. That's what we're here to do.
Hey, welcome back to the Real Estate Excellence Podcast, where we connect with the professionals who define what it means to succeed in today's real estate market. Today's guest has built a career on precision, consistency, and a deep market expertise. With over 2 decades of business, that he's averaged 50-plus transactions annually, specializing in REO and institutional sales. They don't just navigate complex deals, they thrive in them, turning distressed properties and high-demand scenarios into seamless closings. He's served not only the clients, but the industry itself, leading the 2025 president of the Real MLS and chairing Jacksonville's Historic Preservation Commission. A true operations, a leadership pro. They bring the rare combines of both on-the-ground knowledge and high-level strategic thinking. A Jacksonville native and father of 2, this guest exemplifies service, discipline, and long-term success in one of Florida's most dynamic markets. Let's welcome Ethan Gregory to the show.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here. I enjoyed the podcast, and I'm looking forward to sharing my stories with everybody in the market and hear what you have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. And you're bringing a new angle to the show, because I haven't had anyone on here that I can think of, in your episode 284, that specializes in this area of real estate, with the REOs and institutional sales, as ChatGPT defined from your bio there. I didn't like the way it had me tripped up, because it was saying they instead of, singular you. I don't know where. I should have read that before. I had it created and I scanned it, and I should have read it out loud, and I would have picked up those things. But let's kick off the show. This is the easy one, because you get into real estate very young, shortly out of University of Florida. But you go to University of Florida. What did Ethan envision himself doing as a career? I mean, was real estate actually on your mind at that time, or?
A little bit. So I graduated from the University of Florida in 2004, and I got a degree in sociology, which, a lot of people don't use their degrees, and I certainly don't technically use my sociology degree. But I grew up around real estate. My father was a commercial real estate broker here in Jacksonville. He worked for a number of companies. He actually served with the Commercial Alliance of Realtors and on the NEFAR board 1 year as well, too. So I kind of always grew up around it. So when I got out of college, I decided what I wanted to do. Didn't want to do anything with my degree necessarily. So I got into real estate and wanted to do some investing. I found a business partner. We were buying houses, fixing them up, selling them, flipping, just throughout Northeast Florida here. And
speak a little bit about that time period here in Jacksonville. The early before 2007, 8, where things. Well, I think it's somewhere in 2006 things start to go south.
Sure.
Yeah, I think we saw values peak out at that time, and all of a sudden values started to drop a little bit. But the opportunities, although there's still opportunities today, but the amount of homes that were there for you to do these fix and flips. Yeah.
So there were a lot of opportunities there, and it was a lot driven by buyers could do in the marketplace there. At the time, I think there were some favorable interest rates and incentives from the government following 2001. And so there was some great opportunities there in the market in general. And there's some similarities today. We saw, a great run-up in prices and a lot of fever in the market in 2020 and a few years after that. And now we're seeing a little slowdown in reaction to that. Prices got a little high back then in the mid-2000s, and maybe prices got a little high here. Interest rates maybe were held low too long, that kind of thing. So we're seeing a little bit of a market adjustment because of that.
So Dad's in the business, so it gives you a little bit of taste of what's going on. Opportunities there. You're able to do were you pretty much doing the flips full time, or were you practicing when do you get your real estate license?
Sure, I got my real estate license in 2004, right after I graduated. And yeah, I was doing the flips, and I did a couple transactions here and there, friends and stuff like that you meet that are, willing to trust you as 18-year-old. I was a little young looking, so it took a little trust. But yeah, that's kind of how it all got started for me. I did a few sales here and there. And then when the market kind of changed, you talk about 2006, 2008, 2009. Anybody who's around at that time knows the difficulties that we had, just a tremendous amount of inventory. We think about inventory right now being high, and we're just kind of like near an average, historically average amount of inventory. And I looked at some stats maybe a while ago, like in 2010 or 11, I think there was like a 23-month supply of homes, depending on where you're at, which is crazy. And so, which is wild to think about.
Yeah.
People just weren't buying. And so, and during that time period when things changed, I decided, well, I'm not making any money doing this flipping thing. I'll just, be like a regular real estate agent. And I started doing a lot of short sales with the company, and we did a ton of those.
Speak of that a little bit, of that transition, because I would imagine in 2004 and 5, no one really knew what a short sale was. You're doing the flips, and I'm sure you're able to acquire some of these homes, because older homes or whatever, because they didn't owe that much, or whatever, you were able to acquire them out. The values are going up so high, so as soon as you just did any sort of new flooring paint job, it was worth that much more, right?
Kind of, yeah.
Well, I think
it felt like it at the time.
Yeah, it felt like it. I think a lot of people were today, obviously one of the major things like people do in Florida is add a pool to the house. You can't get a dollar for dollar return on that.
No.
An investment, where there you were seeing a dollar for dollars return on investment for certain things that you were doing, and upgrading the house, that type of thing. But then you start to see, when do you start to notice or start to realize, hold on, this market's changing, and it happens pretty quickly, and then learn, I got to figure out how to do a short sale.
Oh, how did I figure that out when I didn't have any money? That's a lot of that. It gets real at that point.
Yeah.
But all joking aside, it was a really an educational thing at that point. I had to figure out a new way to do business. People didn't have a ton of equity. These were the sellers that could get transactions done. You had to learn how to do short sales, how to coach up your sellers to do short sales, form partnerships with title companies, learn how the ropes work dealing with the banks, to negotiate the short sale down, and then, just fighting the fight and really, advocating for your sellers to keep them out of foreclosure and help save their credit, get them forgiven of all that debt.
Right.
It was, I want to say it was a crusade, but sometimes you felt like, you were doing this to, a lot of times I got to help these people. I cannot let them go into foreclosure.
Right.
And that was just is what you had to do at the time. Yeah.
Your brokerage at the time, were you working with that at the time?
No, I was a different brokerage, yeah.
Okay, so you're a different brokerage. One of the topics I always bring up, everyone knows if they listen to the show regularly, is your choice of brokerage. And obviously at this time, either you're really savvy or you have a leadership that's going, hey, the wind is changing directions. We need to change the sales and to start conquering. Because obviously I know, I've had many great agents who've been on the show who went through this period of time. Obviously, we know a lot of people dropped out of the business, didn't want to acclimate to it. But obviously, the REOs and the short sales, you needed to learn that if you wanted to thrive in that.
Correct.
time period.
Exactly. Yeah.
What were you given guidance, or is this something you dove in yourself?
It was something I really just dove into. I had a group that we work with that's really specialized in short sales. Like I mentioned, my father did commercial real estate, so staying with him wasn't going to do me. It helped me grow my business in residential, and I didn't really want to do commercial. It just didn't really fit me at the time.
Right.
And I still really do enjoy residential. So it just was a choice at the time, and that I needed to find a way to make this work, and found a group to work with, and we just did a ton of short sales, and that's when I learned about REO as well, and doing some of that and transitioned to that phase.
What did you learn? What are some of the little tricks, some of the things that necessarily aren't in any books about short sales and REOs that you had to discover really quickly during this time?
Oh, man. I like to always tell people that what makes a great REO agent is very different than what makes a great luxury real estate agent, or even what makes a great first-time home buyer agent. Any type of whatever your niche is. Being an REO agent, it's much more technical, much more detailed, a lot more paperwork oriented. There's less, marketing and hand-holding of your customers, less, sitting in the living room, not doing a lot of that. And so it's just a different style. It's got to be a little more detailed. You got to be a little more analytical type of person. So it's just, being a luxury real estate agent's great. And they may not thrive as an REO agent and vice versa, or whatever your niche is.
Be a little more analytical.
Yeah.
I have an idea what you mean by that, but explain why do you need to be more analytical to our.
So just for example, you got to do some valuations for these, banks, and you do a lot of them, and they want to be very detailed about, why you're, assessing the value in this way, because they're not going to pick up the phone and have a chitty chat with you and feel warm and fuzzy about the price, because it's just an asset to them. They have this asset manager may have 300 to 500 of these files.
He could be in Seattle, Washington, for all
and they don't know. They don't know when I'm talking about. Oh, this street's good, but not that street. Like what street?
Exactly.
So, and they're not a homeowner that's sitting there with you.
Right.
So some of that detail with it and being analytical, like one part of the job that I really like is the problem solving. For example, I have one right now where we have code violations and fines of over $100,000.
Oh,
and
geez.
you can solve that problem with the city. You just kind of work it and know how. The city will work with you on these things. It's just a matter of solving the problem. So I enjoy the problem solving. So we talk about analytical stuff,
Well, let's dig into this story here. This because I think any of our listeners could come upon this, and obviously maybe want to contact you or put it on to you because you're walking this path. So you have a house. It's gone into foreclosure, and so it sounds like it's been neglected for.
This particular one we're talking about.
Yeah. So what kind of violations? And I imagine these violations have been going on for a period of time to gather up to that much
years.
money. Yeah.
Years.
Yeah.
And it can be a number of things. A lot of times, the grass doesn't get cut, and that can be a violation. And the city will come cut it, and there'll be a lien. But then the violations rack up, and they get a fine on it with the city over time. And again, if there's $100,000 in violations on it, and the home's only worth $100,000. The city's obviously like, well, we can't just keep on finding it. Nothing's going to ever happen with this property.
Right.
So they'll negotiate it and settle it. You just got to work with the code compliance department, which is not speedy. So a lot of agents, they want to answer quick. They want to satisfy their buyers or whoever they're working with to get them across it. And sometimes just answers don't happen quickly. And if you're working with the city, you've got to have patience through it. Always coach people to have a lot of patience.
Well, the city ultimately would like someone to own that house and take care of it. They're not into collecting the fine per se.
Yes, correct. Yeah.
Just trying to just encourage the proper behavior.
Correct. Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Yeah. So this particular property, is anyone living in it?
So there was someone living in it previously, prior to being foreclosed on, and this foreclosure got on for years. This particular case, but not currently. So when I take over a property, it's usually after it's gone through the foreclosure. It's not that there's a foreclosure filing. It means it's actually gone to the courthouse steps or online as it is now, and it's been given back to the plaintiff, the bank. And so they take possession or ownership of the property, and then they reach out to me or any other REO agent that they have in their database.
To get it up to speed and try to sell it.
Go out there, figure out what's going on with it. If somebody's still living there, do you get the grass cut, maintain, clean it out. People walk through these foreclosures and they say, this looks like it needs so much work. And it took a lot of work to get it to just to get to this level. You guys don't understand.
Yeah.
And there's also some banks that will take it and repair the homes as well. They'll take, if it doesn't need a tremendous amount of repairs, a lot of times they'll fix them up and repair them and get them financeable.
Because you got to kind of pitch them the return on investment.
Correct.
Hey, if we spend $5,000 here, we can sell this house faster.
Yeah, it'd be financeable or something. Yeah. By spending $5,000, and that's obviously some value to that. Yeah.
I guess what probably mind boggles a majority of people is how does a home get into that much? How do years go by on something like that? Why isn't that? If someone's living in this house, assuming they were the owner, who knows, it might have been a renter, but just totally, they start getting foreclosure notices. They walk up with this. Sounds like this house sat for a good period of time, and obviously it's going to deteriorate pretty quickly here in Florida if the AC is not running and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
I guess there's just people that literally just walk away.
It depends.
And and someone's waiting for them to come back, and they never come back.
Depends. I mean, there's every type of circumstance you can walk into. I mean, I've walked up to homes before, after it's been foreclosed on. It's just a beautiful home. It's just magnificent. Nothing wrong with it. And sometimes you go there and it needs everything.
Right.
It's the spectrum. Some people deal with it better than others, going through this difficult time. And I want to say this too. Also, when I walk up and there's a homeowner, it's my first time visiting there, you try to have compassion and understanding for them in their situation. I guarantee you if they had the money, they would have paid their bills. That's the thing. They're all, most of them are great people. They're just in a bad situation.
What do you think? I guess, again, none of these, I'm asking these questions from just being a novice, bystander here. And, I think in today's market, although, prices have come down a little bit, but not like dropped like they did in 2008 or anything like that, where if they're in this situation, is it a fear of the unknown to consult with a real estate agent and say, hey, we're not going to be able to make our payments. We really need to sell this house. Otherwise, the bank's going to take it over. Mm-hmm. Is it just this kind of fear of unknown, fear of admitting maybe they're in this situation that they literally let it go and go back to the bank?
Yeah, so it gets a lot of reasons, but I think us as humans, and Americans as well, we're eternal optimists. We think we can turn this around. You fall behind a few payments, okay, I'm going to get a new job, or I'm going to do this to fix it, and you try to work your way through it. And a lot of times people can. And so I think there's just natural optimism that we all have, and we don't want to lose our home, of course, so we're going to do everything we can to keep it. So there's a lot of that too. Maybe there's some people stick their head in the sand. I wouldn't say that's the majority of them. But also some people just do the math that, if I stay here, I can ride out this foreclosure for a while, and they'll just stay there until it's a problem. It's any number of reasons, but I think most of the times it's, people think they can dig themselves out of it, and this, whatever happened in their life, they couldn't, either health-wise, job-wise, family-wise. There's a lot of reasons that people end up in this difficult situation.
Sure. All right. So and like you said, some properties don't need anything. You turn around, stick a sign in the yard, and it's ready to show. Others need some work. So you're working with the bank and at least getting it up to an acceptable speed they feel is... Obviously, because you're the feelings, you're the eyes for them. You're telling them, right?
I will say that different banks and different sellers have different priorities and different things they do, just like any other seller. Some will want to fix it up. Some say, we're not fixing a darn thing. It's just the spectrum there of what they want to do. So I'm really there to serve them and what they need, and and I give them the best options I can during that time period and say, hey, maybe you should do this. And they're like, nope, we're not doing this. Or, no, you're not doing enough, Ethan. You need to do more, kind of thing. So it just depends.
I'm sure you have institutions you rather work with than others.
Well, sure, yeah. Well, like everybody has a seller that they love to work with, or a buyer they've loved to work with. It's okay. It's the same thing. Some people want to work with me, and some people don't. Sure.
You worked through the 2007 through really. When do you think it was 2000? Probably started in 7, right? Where you started to see a number of foreclosures. When did we start to get back to? Obviously it spikes, and then when does it get back to, I don't know if you want to call it a normal level? Are we talking like 2012, 13 before we've worked through all those foreclosures during that time?
If I remember my numbers correctly, I think prices bottomed out sometime in 2011, and then it was on a upward rise up until maybe a year ago.
Right.
Really. And that's here in Jacksonville.
Were the banks prepared, or not? Because the answer has to be, I can't believe they were prepared for a lot of them for what was going to happen in 7 and 8, 9. The amount of foreclosures, but some were definitely better than others.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. That movie, The Big Short, is it called The Big Short? Is that
the
one?
Yeah.
That one, shows what they didn't know at the time or what they thought they knew. And that's just kind of, that's a dramatization. It's a movie. But I can't tell you what they didn't or didn't know, what they thought was going to come. I think if they knew what was going to come, they would have, not had that problem, I think.
Well, I think, because my wife and I came, we were given the ability, we were living in Arkansas. She's from Jacksonville, so we wanted to move back here, be closer to her parents. So Thanksgiving 2008, we get here. I told her to, you go narrow it down to about a half a dozen homes. I'm working from home at the time from Quicken, so I've got my computer with me, and I think we were staying at her parents' house at the time. And so I'm working. She's showing us. She finds the number of homes, and the home we ended up buying. We literally made the offer, I think it was Tuesday before Thanksgiving in 2008, and on Wednesday afternoon we got an acceptance, and I believe that was an anomaly. How quickly now, from what, and I don't know if this was true or not, supposedly the agent that we were working with, or at least the listing agent, obviously had that banking institution's person on speed dial said, hey, we got an offer, boom, they made a decision, accept it, boom, we had an accepted offer in 24 hours. That's not normal, is it?
No, I usually tell buyers agents to just be patient with me and working with the bank. It's going to take a while. Again, they have like hundreds of these files on their desk, and they'll get to this one. It just may not be when it's on the buyer's agent or the buyer's timeline. But yeah, I mean, just again, every bank's a little different. Every asset manager is a little different on how they prioritize things. And maybe that one prioritized signing this thing that day,
Right.
So who knows?
Well, this person had the relationship with them to call them and pull it out and say, yeah, we'll take that and write on.
Maybe so.
But obviously, like I said, the asset managers, all of them have a little different attitude. They're looking at it. What do we got in this? How much are we willing to lose if we're losing something just to get it off our books because it's going to cost us this much more if we kept it on another whatever.
Sure.
Yeah, all those things.
They don't tell me those numbers.
Yeah. But I guess my curiosity just really is there's no training class for that.
Not really. I mean, there are some institutions, like, for example, 5 Star is one. They help with the default industry, is what it's called. And they provide some training. It's very broad-based. I mean, but like some of those like small details, no, that's just what you learn along the way. That's just the experience you have and knowing like how it works, Or maybe you've worked with that particular seller a lot of times and you know how they work. And that goes for any client, really. If you know how they work, you can manage things in advance, dealing with buyers agents, title companies, lenders, all those things to kind of set it up a little better, and keep everybody on pace, and again, being patient with it.
Well, I think, even the agents that are just working with sellers right now, that say they have an empty house and they've already moved away. So that house is sitting there empty. Obviously, they're still paying the mortgage payment. They got taxes and insurance and, those fees for the community if they've got them going on. And, you wonder, because even dealing with some of these sellers, like, okay, if you turn down this offer, by the time you take another offer and sell it, you've got houses on the market another 2 more months. That's going to cost you $5 more grand. So why are you walking away from $5 grand now? Right?
Sure, yeah.
The bank is dealing with that too. Is the attitude of that person who is in that running that asset thing? What kind of, some have more power than others.
Sure.
The attitude of the bank or what they feel is, hey, we're going to lose $3,000, we're going to lose $5,000 on this one because it's going to cost us that much if we keep it on another 3 months.
Yeah, maybe so, yeah. And the same thing with the seller, like a traditional seller.
Yeah.
I mean, a big thing now, I think I looked at a stat earlier today, like the number one reason transactions are falling through right now are inspections and repairs. A lot of sellers may be thinking, no, we've already reduced the price this, I don't want to do these repairs right now, or like these inspections are too much or whatever. I can't, I don't want to do this. Well, I'm talking to a seller, I'm like, well, you're going to pay this, $3,000 to $5,000 to hold the house another month or two. Well, is this repair going to cost you $2,000 and you can close this month?
A lot of times not even that.
Well, but you understand the math,
yeah.
Like it's the idea of it. And it's like, well, we'll just do the repair, like just make the buyer happy and move on and just understand this is what the market is. Some sellers, like, again, traditional sellers, maybe out there saying, my agent's not doing anything for me. There's no offers coming through. There's no showings. And I tell you, if I could get, 100 people to look at your house today, I would do it. I'd run them right through there.
Right.
It's just they're not there to do it as much these days. There's still plenty of buyers out there. It's still very active. Pricing is very important, regardless of whether it's an REO or traditional seller. Pricing proactively. And then being able to work with the buyers and buyers agents to be able to overcome those repairs or financing issues. A lot of affordability issues, obviously, that we've all seen due to the high prices and the interest rates. Insurance has gone up. Repair costs have gone up, too. And so, a lot of buyers just want a move-in ready home. They don't want to have to go in and fix it, do the high cost of repairs. And so it's working with these buyers agents and educating your sellers that they got to be a little more flexible right now if they want to get their transaction done. Because there are buyers out there.
Yeah.
It's just you got to be smart about the way you're marketing the home and how you're pricing it.
Well, that brings up a great topic. I often say, a lot of buyers right now, a lot of the agents have come on, they really want turnkey.
Yeah.
I'm a pre-inspection supporter.
Sure.
Because knowing the sales process and the fact there is a lot of inventory right now, someone who gets in that home, they have a little buyer's remorse. They're going through the process. Oh, there's a repair. Oh, that's my ticket out. And that's, although there's many other tickets out, but that's the easy ticket out.
Sure.
And say, oh, I don't like the repairs that need to be done. I don't want to buy this house. And they can walk away real easy versus if you stamp all those out before they even order their own inspection, you're less likely to lose it because of that.
Yeah, at a minimum, your financing and insurance issues. If you can get those things squared away, the rest would just be cosmetic, or maybe small issues. Really nailing those insurance and financing issues. I agree. Doing an inspection prior to listing, even if it's just a 4-point even, I think is money well spent. Of course, you have to disclose if anything's wrong with the home at that point, but you do kind of nip in the bud those things if you're going for that strategy. If you're not going for like an as-is sale, for example, if you're going for, fully repaired, you have a beautiful home kind of thing, let's just make sure things are, buttoned up. So when the buyer comes to and does their inspection, it doesn't give them a reason to feel uneasy about the transaction.
Yeah. There's always something, it's on their mind. Yeah. I mean, just as buyer's remorse. From your side, representing the bank versus a normal seller, in this current market that we're in right now, I would imagine you probably have some houses that are sitting.
Sure. I mean,
statistically, you do.
Yeah, more so than I did a couple of years ago, just like everybody else.
Right.
The days on the market are longer. Again, the inspection satisfying buyers through the inspection process can be a little more challenging. And the pricing, of course, I say proactive pricing is kind of the term I use. It's staying ahead of the market. You don't want to chase your price too high and chase your tail on the way down, because you're going to end up selling it for less in the long run if you do it that way.
Right.
And trying to have some pie in the sky idea about the value of your home. And so, it's just being really proactive about that stuff and being honest with your customers that, things are sitting a little longer. It's okay. I mean, if we get to, I think, historical average is somewhere around 60 days on the market. It's pretty normal. So we're around that right now. It just feels different because if you were licensed in the past 5 years, which our membership numbers at the MLS and NEFAR are that, about half, maybe a little bit less than half of all of our agents were licensed in the past 5 years.
Right.
So there's that churn through. So if you were licensed in 2020, 2021, you were trained up on how to just move fast. We got to get these transactions going. We got to work with these buyers. You got to get that offer in quick. Well, you don't have to do that now. And maybe if you're working with your sellers, say, hey, we got to get everything ready to go on the market, and we're going to get this home sold in 3 days. And that's not the case anymore. So you got to unlearn some of those things and learn a new way to do business.
I think there's some houses that will sell in the first weekend.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Because they just got the right address. Everything just is like
right pricing, looks great.
People walk
quick
in
photos.
and get it. So you don't want to. You want to have a sense of urgency there of getting the good offer in, or making communication with the selling agent. Hey, I'm going to make an offer, and obviously make a good one, because you could have some competition, or like you said, there's these houses sitting 60, 90 days. Someone was talking to yesterday. There was a townhouse in St. Johns County under $300,000. Oddly, is like pushing 120 days. Amazingly, but it's there. How are you working? So just an agent, like so many agents have been in over half or just 5 years or less. So they've probably never actually had a buyer buying an REO property.
Sure.
Walk us through some of the expectations. Now, we know sometimes you might get an answer in minutes, but it might be a period of time. Walk us through kind of setting the expectations.
So you get the offer in, present it, make sure you get your pre-approval letter and all that stuff. It sounds pretty basic, but I have to ask for these things, like it's a normal thing. And then, usually within 48 business hours, people want to answer on the weekend. I usually cannot get you an answer from any of these REOs or institutional sellers on a weekend. Every now and then, sometimes, but usually not.
Yeah.
So just expect it only business days. And just understand it's very down to business of them. There's no emotions in it for them. It's just all about their numbers.
Yep.
And they want a very clean and plain contract. All your brokerage addendums that your broker might require, they're not going to sign. They won't sign mine even. They're not going to sign yours. And a bunch of other stuff like that. It's just all very plain. They want it all very, they'll do your basic, forms like your FAR bar, your flood disclosures, your HOA disclosures. FHA, all that normal stuff. Yeah, they'll do all that stuff that they have to do. Right. But they're not going to sign all these other disclosures and stuff like that. And as simple and plain as possible to offer. Most banks, I've never seen a bank accept an offer contingent upon the sale of another home. And that's a lot of challenge for some people. There are ways to work around it with, extended financing times and things like that. But, usually they're not going to do that. They prefer not to do new repairs. Again, depending on the bank, some might say, well, maybe do repairs. Like if they've already fixed the home up, and maybe one thing got missed or something, they'll do it. but usually
If
they're
it's
not
under
going
some
to.
sort of dollar threshold, I'm sure they
I
got some
don't
sort
know.
of some. Yeah, they're
They don't tell me, like, I don't get to look at their back end.
Right,
I'm
right.
just there, to serve my client and help them get the home sold, get the best value possible.
Right.
So whatever their business model is, it's just like whatever motivates a traditional seller too. Like, I can't always know what their motivations are. They just may say, this is what I want to do, and that's okay.
I would imagine a lot of the REO homes are empty.
Yeah.
There's
yes,
vacant, right? So from a buyer's perspective, a buyer's agent coming to you and saying, hey, we want to make an offer on this. From a closing perspective, should they expect, hey, this might take 60 days? Versus going, hey, we want to close by the end of the month and we're 3 weeks out.
No, by the time we have a home on the market, once we have an accepted offer, we should be able to close within 30 days, if not faster.
Okay, so they're snapped when it's
usually the title, unless there's a title issue, and usually they would have cleared that up ahead of time, prior to us listing the home. They have these banks that go through the foreclosure with them. They also are usually the title company for them. And so what they'll do is they'll do like a preliminary title search, but after they get the foreclosure, they'll clean up all the things we got to clean up. That's part of what I do, helping with like paying the outstanding fines like we talked about, or if there was something that didn't get signed correctly, we'll chase all that stuff down.
Right.
So we try to nip those things in the bud before we ever get to the point of listing the home for sale. So we go with marketable title when we go on the market. That said, sometimes things pop up, things happen, things fall through the cracks, or whatever the situation is.
Right.
But you should be able to close within like 30 days, pretty typically.
Okay, so after they accept the offer, they're actively working. That file's now got attention to it.
It's going to a title
we're
company.
ironing this out and let's get it off our books.
Goes just like to a regular title company. Title company works with the buyer's lender. They get those things squared away. Obviously, the buyer does their inspections and everything. So appraisals, good stuff like that.
What is, again, from the buyer's perspective, coming to you, some of the things that they need to know up front when buying an REO property? Because there was a period of time there, obviously, because we had so many short sales and foreclosure during the 7 to 12 period of time. People were like, oh, they're thinking they're getting some great deal if they buy an REO property. Is that always so?
I mean, you can find a deal anywhere, REO
well, I know the deal is sometimes in your mind, but
REO could be a deal.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes there's good values there. I mean, the reason these banks hire me or hire another real estate agent is because they want to maximize their value. I'm there to make the transaction work for them, be their boots on the ground. I'm kind of their eyes and ears. But also, it's to make sure I am maximizing their value, getting the best offer possible, negotiating as well as we can for them. I mean, if the buyer thinks it's a deal, then it's a deal. Like maybe they can make money off it by fixing it up and selling it. Great. That's their prerogative. I mean, sometimes I've seen buyers purchase homes and I'm like, I don't know if that's going to work as an investment property. And sure enough, I was wrong. They turned around and sold it for quite a bit of money. So it's just how that goes. So it's really I'm trying to maximize the value for these customers and sell at the best price possible. It's not really to get a deal for some investor, that's here locally. I'm hired by the seller here. Right. So
well, it's again, every asset manager's different. They just cover my losses and go. Another asset manager may say, well, I can actually make a couple dollars on here because I lost a couple dollars on the other one, so I need to, and I can hold it on this one, type of thing. I can imagine those kind of business decisions are going on, and people have to realize they're looking. Hey, I lost that one. I need to win over here.
Maybe so. I don't know. I can't. That's their own.
Business. Or others. They're just
whatever their boss is telling
just
them.
clean it off my books, depending on what's going on and so forth. What have you seen in your realm change from regulations to processes to whatever, from 2007 when you roughly started doing them to today, the process or regulations that's behind the foreclosure process and the REO? What's changed or gotten better or worse?
So two things, and they kind of go hand in hand, is really a lot of the banks, and especially this goes for some of the GSEs like Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, very concerned about being a quality neighbor. Maintaining the house. For example, I remember Fannie Mae would always say that, when we put this home on the market, we want to make sure when you drive by the home, it looks like a nice home on the street. They're going to cut the yard correctly. They're going to do the bushes, mulch it, pressure wash it, make sure it looks nice. Being a good neighbor and not just like letting it go. That's a big thing that kind of grew up out of that time period, because there were so many foreclosures at that time that it was like a drag on a lot of neighborhoods, and they were blaming, these banks or GSEs for all these problems. And so they really took that to heart, and being good neighbors and a good business, they changed that. Another change that kind of goes in hand with that is, previously they would just like foreclose on it. Let's, cut the grass and we'll put it on the market. Like they didn't do a darn thing. Everything was sold as is. Right. Well, nowadays, a lot of them will fix it up. They'll try to maximize that value. A lot of them didn't do that back then. And nowadays, a lot of them do. I mean, some properties are better candidates than others for that, but they do. That's been a big push, in the past since, let's say the middle of the 2010s.
Right. Well, it sounds like they've become a little more savvy in that. And you're right. I mean, we had a neighbor. Well, not only our yard, because I don't know how long our house went, and it wasn't a short period of time. I think it was over a year. Our yard went, here in Florida, if you're not treating that St. Augustine grass.
Weeds.
It's fried and weeded out was in no matter of time at all. And then the house literally next door, we were there a couple of years. I think they got divorced. She just walked away from it and literally left like her wedding dress in the closet.
Oh, that's sad.
They had to say, because I'm sure you experienced this, where they send over the crew to clean out the house, and it was full of everything. She literally just walked out of the house and left it there. Of course, the yard went, the new people who bought it, and they're still in there now, had to resod the entire yard and everything. And that kind of stuff was going on. But they were bad neighbors. Yeah. And
it hurts. I mean, HOAs obviously are, finding them or giving them problems about it. Neighbors are unhappy, hurts the values in the neighborhood, those kind of things, and a lot of the banks took that to heart and did their best.
Well, that's good news.
Yeah, they tried. They really did. I mean, it's kind of the same thing with the people that foreclose on. They're good people. They're just in a bad situation. And these banks, they would prefer that the homeowners would pay their bills on time every time.
Right.
But they're stuck in a bad situation of having to take this property back and try and do the best they can with it, And that's kind of the perspective I take with it, is that everybody's just trying to do the best thing they can, it's a difficult situation. This is not always the cleanest and easiest transaction to work through, but people just, if you go in the mindset that people are trying to do the best thing and make it right as best they can in a difficult situation, you have a different perspective and realize that, maybe we can work together to solve these problems,
Right. I imagine you have some investors on a speed dial, people who are, especially, well, I guess really for anything, whether it's a good rental property or whether it's a truly distressed property that, needs a complete gut, that kind of thing, where the investors in the areas where you have companies that's what they do. I would imagine you kind of might work with them, or they're always checking with you what might be coming on.
Some customers that we use, but I mean, with these bank-owned homes and institutional investors as well. They're going to require me to put the home on the market. It's going to be 7 days on the MLS prior to them accepting any offers. Okay. They don't let me just like pass it on. Is
that like some sort of guideline, or just something they internally?
Sometimes it's a guideline, and sometimes it's just their business strategy. It's a guideline for example, the GSEs require that, that to be on the market. I think it's still 7 days prior to them accepting any offers, because they want exposure to the market and all buyers to have a chance to see it. One, for the maximizing the profit standpoint, but also as a fairness. Again, if it's a GSE,
well, they're a bank, they got to show their fairness. Right?
Well, that's part a lot of these companies are publicly traded companies, and they have guidelines to follow. And if and sometimes it's like a compliance thing. People wonder why they won't sign this or they will sign that, or why does things have to be that way. They are trying to be compliant. This division that handles these REO properties, they're having to be compliant when they're audited. Somebody's going to pull this file, and if we didn't do something correctly, then it's a problem for that department, that asset manager, and possibly for me.
Right.
So there's a reason for it. It's like if anybody used to work in the banking industry, they'll understand that you got to check these boxes. If we get audited, it's going to be a problem. And that's what they deal with as well.
Right.
So there's different levels to it, and there's usually a reason why I'm having to ask for something or not do something, and you just got to help.
No, that makes total sense. I mean, we know a local banking institution that got hit hard here a couple of years ago for, the banks have big. I think a lot of people don't realize banks are required to do so many or do such activities relative to the community, and obviously putting a house, they're not going to accept any offers until it's out there a week, giving plenty of people to come in and make an offer on it versus, you could be simply turning a lot of these places over to investors, and they're not maximizing their possible profitability on a retail sale versus a more of a wholesale where someone's trying to flip it and make more money, type of thing.
Yeah, again,
that makes sense.
Here to maximize, their profits for the seller. Yeah.
All right, let's change directions. Let's talk about the real MLS. But let's start with because you mentioned your father earlier, and he was involved at NEFAR, and type of thing. For the agents out there that are listening, the importance of getting involved in the board in one way, shape, or form or other. Maybe they're not going to say want to be president of the real MLS, or even be the leader of any community, but to be part of what's going on, to go down to the association occasionally, whether it's to take a class or even just participate on some of the volunteer activities that are the importance of that in relative to the industry of real estate.
Sure. There's a lot of ways to say this, but the more you give, the more you get back in return. And I feel like the time that I've given to the MLS and NEFAR it's been given back to me so much more, and just the knowledge I've acquired, the people I've met, just being around some people that are tremendously more talented than I am is just a great experience that I wouldn't have had the opportunity to do. And so anybody that's out there thinking about volunteering with the MLS or NEFAR, it's a great way to serve your industry. It's a great way to realize there are people out there doing business differently than you, and you can still work with them. It's interesting about real estate is that we're all competitors, but we all work together. And so we can work together with people to serve our industry. Learn what's going on in the market, or learn what's going on in the industry changes, and be ahead of those changes. For the MLS, I'll say specifically, the past 2 years have been a tremendous amount of time of change. We've had the change where you can't have brokerage compensation in the MLS anymore. Around that same time, we got rid of our NEFAR forms and went to FAR forms. And at that same time as well, we launched the coast-to-coast data share, where we are sharing MLS data with other MLSs in the state. We're not taking over their MLSs. We're not trying to be their MLS. We are sharing data with them. And so we want to take down the artificial barriers to the data throughout the state of Florida. So if you're licensed in the state of Florida as a real estate agent, you should have access to the information on these homes. And that's what we're trying to do by sharing the MLS data between us, St. Augustine, Space Coast, and Daytona and Hernando County, and hopefully more soon. So it's a time of change, and so you can be ahead of those changes. You can know what's going on. You can help craft some of those changes that are good for your marketplace. And some of these changes that we vote on the board or other places may not be good for me business-wise, but it's good for the marketplace in general. And that's what we're looking for, is to make the marketplace function, provide the information, the forms, the data, the technology for agents to succeed. And so that's been a really eye-opening thing for me is, there's so many different ways to do this business and so many ways to be successful. And serving will give you that perspective that things are bigger than you, I'm sure you've had other people say this too, but having a heart to serve, is part of it. And you got to want to do it, and that can be at whatever your charity you're interested in too. It doesn't have to be MLS. I enjoy that part of it.
I would imagine you're an RPAC supporter.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I like to bring that up whenever I have someone in here who I know could speak of knowledge, and which you've just expressed, the importance of RPAC and making your donation if you don't want to actually put your time in to come up with at least some financial dollars, and because how important it is to have a representative in Tallahassee, to have a representative in DC.
Yeah, it's tremendously important. Again, change over the past year or two, people have been kind of down on NAR, and the Realtor brand. And part of that's some changes that we've had, like I mentioned, but it's also just a function of maybe NAR not telling the story of the victories that they have, these legislative victories, and some of them, maybe happen in, lobbying behind the scenes, but some of them are real victories about, taxes, local regulations that are going to hurt homeowners, any number of things that are happening either, with legislation that's come out, or with things that are just being stopped that would potentially hurt property rights. That's the big thing. Property rights are very important, and NAR, FAR, NEFAR as well. We all try to stand up for those whenever we can.
Yeah, I think because a lot of times it's not put out there on the front page of their victories, or even their challenges, which obviously insurance right now.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I imagine the representatives that is a topic agenda on every meeting they're having is something to do with insurance.
Insurance, it goes right into the affordability question. Insurance is difficult. Like, I joke with people that I have more trouble with obtaining insurance and satisfying an insurance company than I do dealing with a lender and appraiser.
Yeah.
It seems like they have these little things they're always going to find something, especially if you're dealing with older homes. They could be a real challenge. So, the association standing up for crafting legislation that would help with insurance and stuff like that. For example, talk about the flood disclosure that we now have to use as of last year when we signed a contract. That I'm sure that FER had a hand in help crafting that language in there to make sure it was reasonable and met the law, which I think is a good law. It's a good thing to have, to disclose to people that homes are flooded or not. I think that's a perfectly reasonable thing. But just doing some of those things, and people, our members, may not always realize that there's all these wins going on, there's all these things happening that are making our industry better, that they are doing along the way that just aren't front and center, that aren't seen necessarily, and they see that we can't put compensation in the MLS anymore, and they are mad about it because things are different. But I can tell you, things are still moving along just fine. People are still closing sales. Agents are still being paid. It's a business. You just got to explain your value.
I had Cindy Hayden on a year ago or so, and obviously she's deep into insurance. That's her kind of her thing, and she was on the NAR committee, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, a couple of years ago. And things just like the look back period, when it comes to flood and being in a flood area, and how they'll look back on your claims that you've made versus, I think, the value of the home, if I'm not mistaken, but how every county was a little different there. And this going down to because she has a house on the beach over on the Gulf. And every county was different. And those county commissioners, they're not necessarily real estate agents. They may be developers, but they're not thinking about the homeowner per se as a real estate agent who's out here on a day-to-day basis in the trenches with homeowners and mortgage people and everybody else, to make that house affordability and so forth going on. And sometimes they don't think of some of these things, like, oh, hold on a second, that look back period, that's not going to work because you got to get a permit to put an HVAC system in. That might cost $15,000, $20,000 on a house on the beach, and then all of a sudden you don't have any room due to the look back period, or it's little things like that. They need someone who's on the ground to advise.
Absolutely. It can't expect everyone to know everything.
Yeah.
And so your local council person or your state legislature, I mean, they could be extremely knowledgeable people about a lot of things, but they can't know everything about real estate and how it's one little change they make might affect the business or affect homeowners. And so that's exactly what those RPEC dollars go for, is to lobbyists, and also when we as an association or FAR go down there for the week down in, I usually think it's March, we go meet with state legislatures and senators and kind of explain, here's the big issues that we have. And so those kind of things, they make a huge difference. They do. And you don't always see it, but they're there doing it. And that's why, again, those RPAC dollars are important.
Yep. All right. New agent coming on, your standard consumer out there who's not in the industry. Let's talk about the importance of real MLS. I think a lot of people on the outside is like, well, why does every association have their own MLS? And of course, now you're trying to, what's the term you use? Because I know
data share.
Share with the others. Why does everyone have their own? Is there actually different technology?
It's a historical thing. Why was it always this way? I mean, it used to be, this is prior to, computers and whatnot.
True.
People would, they would submit their listing to the service, and they'd print out a book and deliver it to every brokerage, and that the scope of that was only so large.
Right.
You couldn't do a whole state. And so when those MLSs that were compiling the books got in the technology and things came out, they started putting on the internet, and you still had your multiple listing service here in your local area. And they would service those people. And that still worked for a while. But nowadays, technology is different, the speed of technology and the quality of the technology that is needed on the scale. So there's a lot of moving parts there about, why it still is the way it is. Some of it's territorial. And so that's what we're trying to kind of break through. We're trying to get through this territorialness of your data. We're trying to make it accessible where you can choose your MLS of choice. You can still access the data. You can be licensed. As long as you're licensed, you should have access to real estate data across the state of Florida. And that's our goal at the end of the day, is to share data with any other MLS that wants to with us. We're taking down those arbitrary barriers.
The term that comes to me is the old guard.
Yeah,
and I imagine that's probably been used in your meetings. The old guard wants to guard it.
Well, yeah, people get territorial about their space,
Yeah.
and that's okay. We're not here to tell you how to do your business.
Right.
We believe at Real MLS, that we should take down those artificial barriers that are, holding you back. You may say, well, I'm an agent. When am I ever going to sell a home in Hernando County? And you may not. I'm not driving to Hernando County to sell a home. I'll just refer it out, right? And that's when the value can be shown there. So let's say you have a seller who is, hey, we got to move, but we're moving to Hernando County. Can you sell our home here in Jacksonville? Sure, gotcha. Do you know anybody in Hernando County, though? Well, no, but let me look. So you start searching who's in that area, the price range they want, kind of what they're looking for in a home. You can find an agent there that's doing a lot of business in that area.
Right.
Talk to them, see if it's a good fit, and refer your customer to them. And you brought value to the transaction then. You didn't just pick a random name out of the hat and stick them with them. What you did is you talked to the person, saw they were a good fit, they're talented, they're smart, they will work with your customer, and you can refer that person out then. So you brought value and you helped your customer. And that's just one example of how the data share can work. But really the goal is to set the data free, is to let it be available for your license.
What is, because I know you've heard it. What's the old guard saying why you shouldn't? And I know you use it, well, they want to guard the data. What reason are they into the guard the data? Because people can get the data in alternative ways.
Sure, it gets put onto the third-party websites.
Yeah,
exactly. It goes on
because they're linked into those MLSs,
and that's why we want the data share to work. Is if you're a licensee, you should have access to the best information in the MLS. You shouldn't have to go to this third-party website to access the data, and that's what we're trying to solve for. This isn't going to be solved tomorrow. It's a long-term process, but it is an initiative that we've been working on. Like we call it a healthy marketplace initiative. And why do some other places not want to do it? I mean, you got to talk to them.
Well, I just think, it's having working here recently with a gentleman who has come out with an AI home search, and some of the agents in town are adding it to their websites where they can actually go in and under natural language, just like you're using ChatGPT, or you can use ChatGPT and his company will come up. But if they use it on their website, the listings, because they're connected with the IDX feed, is that the right word? Yeah. With the listings that are fitting their description start coming up. So we started talking. So I've been kind of dabbling in and talking to him and learning about this part of the real estate industry.
Sure.
And I think these old guard is the term I'm going to use, referring to these people who are naysayers or slow to the gate. They're not benefiting themselves because people will get the information.
Yes.
And I'd rather than, I think every agent, just like a loan officer, we'd like to be those people's servicer, their go-to person for real estate, for mortgage lending for their life. That's an ideal situation. They refer you, they buy 3 houses, it's all been through you.
Sure.
But in this case, they're going over to Hernando. Why they should be able to go onto your website because they trust you, and they can go on and search homes in Hernando if they want to, because you've got the connection going over it, type of thing, versus going to those third-party sites we won't name.
Sure. Well, sure. I like to think that your real estate agent is like your advisor, your professional that's going to help you through the transaction. I mean, you can have all the data in the world, but it doesn't really tell the story. That's what we're here to do. I gave a presentation at Realm last monthly for our new members, and I kind of explained that we're the technology and data company at MLS, and we bring all that data in there, we sort it. We make a presentation out of it, make it look pretty. It's sorted, collated, all the good stuff. It looks nice. But a chart doesn't tell a story like you can to your customer. If you can hand them a sheet of statistics, or you can hand them an MLS sheet, it's not going to really tell the story about this property or this transaction. And that's where we step in here. So just like you and the lending business, you can tell them what the interest rate is, but you're just not going to tell them the whole story about how this whole thing's going to work to be able to get the loan and the life of the loan. And so that's where I hope that customers see the value in what we do. People think a real estate agent might just be someone who opens the door, and that's one thing we do out of the 1,000 things we do. And I like to think that they work with us through the transaction, and we can kind of explain the information that is coming to them. So if they're going to these like third-party sites, those third-party sites, have an agenda of their own and what they're going to do with your data and your information if you click on a button, and they may sell your data. They may put you with their agent who you don't know from anybody, and maybe you don't work with them well. Who knows? Right. And that's fine. That's their business model. They're running a business. Right. They're taking our housing information and repackaging it and putting it out there. And that's fine. That's their business model. No issue with that. But I think just the information is limiting. If you only have the information, you need a professional there to help you along the way.
We're moving into this period of time where we're getting the transition from the Google search, or even like you said, going to one of these third-party sites. Of course, if you go on Google and you put something, it leads you the first 10 things on there are all those third-party sites that want you to get on there because their people are paying money for their stuff to be put up front. But we're starting to swing towards the younger generation. I think the sub-30s, from what I understand, and in the statistics, just ChatGPT, the 700 million people are using ChatGPT. That was a few weeks ago, so who knows where it's at today, is growing on a daily basis. Now your reign as president, you've got 5 months left, roughly 4 months left, whatever. That's not going to probably happen in the next 4 months of your. But is the real MLS starting to talk about how are these people finding the homes, getting into the data through AI? And is that something that there's some sort of integration that is coming down in the future? So because I asked that question because you and I know a lot of these agents have been trained to do their listing descriptions using AI, and obviously, when you're searching AI, I hear the number one thing that people use as an example all the time: the house may have a pool, but the agent forgets to even put it in it'll be in the pictures, but it's not in the actual description. Sure. And how do we improve that situation?
So at Real MLS, it's certainly a point of discussion. Where AI, I think, will be in the background of everything we do technology-wise, not just on the MLS, but really everywhere. Yeah. It's going to be in the background of what we're doing. So I think Real MLS is going to position ourselves to do that. For example, you're talking about the listing description thing. Those are integrations that could be put into the MLS system. We don't have those yet, obviously. Ones that can take all the photos. If you have a set of photos you upload, it can write description off the photos. Yep. All those things. Yeah. And so I think that's something we have talked about. It's nothing that we have implemented yet. I'm not sure there is a product that integrates with our MLS right now that does that specifically. So that's the thing. We're not a software development company. So we are not developing.
You're a software user.
Well, we're the technology and data side of it. Yeah. It's not necessarily that we have a team of software developers back there just pumping out new products.
Well, any company, though, that uses a software, like we use Encompass for our loan origination stuff, Encompass has got to be constantly looking for bigger and better updates, right?
Yeah, and we lean on our vendors to see what they're doing as well. Yeah. So that's part of it as well. I think that it is something that's coming. How cool would it be if you could open up your Real MLS app on your phone and you're out showing a house with a customer and they really like it, right? And you say, okay, well, they're in the other room looking at something. You talk to your Real MLS AI chatbot and say, find me, 3 comparable sales in the past 6 months, for this house that I'm showing right now. And it would just pull it up on your phone versus you having to get your computer out and do the search. And then if it just did it for you right there, and doesn't take you away from going back to your desk and doing a real CMA market analysis, but it does give you some information right there at your hand. You're almost like your assistant.
It's the speed of technology and the speed of way, Lyman Starmer, who is the founder of usedeli.com, which has created this AI home search. I told him, I said, I really see because he originally created it for real estate agents to find other property for them just to type in, hey, we're looking for this, this, and this, boom, all of a sudden the properties come up. But then, then I started, well, how, someone asked him, well, let's get it to the consumer. So he's been marketed on that angle. But I could see someone showing a house. And you and I know, being in real estate long enough, people don't tell us everything. And all of a sudden, you're in the house showing it, and they're like, well, we'd really like this. Well, you didn't tell me that before. Sure. Now I I sit back in the car, and I can, talking natural language, hey, we need to add this criteria to the house, narrow my search down, or find me a house that has that, because I just learned that, and boom, those listings are coming up. I think things are going to happen that fast in the very near future.
I agree. It's an exciting time to be a part of, and to see the changes that are coming, not just in our industry, but every industry. These changes that are coming and the speed of which we can do things and information. You talk about listing descriptions. Every real estate agent is doing that. The only thing I worry about with AI is it becoming kind of page one of Google. It's always just like the basic information. It's the standard stuff. And it can only take you so far. You have to have that professional knowledge, and I still think that's why real estate agents and mortgage professionals will still have jobs. They need somebody who can navigate the ins and outs, all the information, local, very specific information or loan-specific information that may not be available in just, the first page of Google or the first initial search with your chat GPT chat, Maybe it'll find you 3 comps, like my example I told you earlier, but they may not be the best ones.
Right, exactly. You don't know.
Know that, and it can't tell, and maybe it will in the future, I joke, but maybe AI can tell what's a good layout versus not. It can't tell you that, but it's not a feel you walk into a home, and that's what people like. And maybe it could in the future, I don't know, but for right now it doesn't. And it's a difference there. And in valuing a home, if you're meeting with a seller, hey, this has a tremendously better layout than the 10 houses on the street.
There's a lot of trust that goes on, and I don't know if anyone has the faith or the trust in the technology yet. Is why we still have appraisers, that are going to go out there and be the eyes and everything else, for the lender, so to speak, and then obviously put a value on it, and to be able to go in there and say, well, find me 3 houses within a mile, that are similar, blah blah blah, and give me comps. There's always a human that's going to look at those and make a judgment call of whether or not those actually are good comps.
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
And I would say always. I don't know if in our lifetime there's going to be that trust gap. There's always going to be a human that's got to verify. Yeah, you gave me 3 good comps. We can use those. Okay. Yeah. It's not going to be. Yep, those are the comps, and that's the end of the game. Type of thing. That's you were leading in there. We were talking about the listing descriptions. Talk, if you could, a few things for the agents who are listening right now, because good agents will complain about newer agents or lazy agents who are not really good at putting these listing descriptions, or just cutting and pasting ChatGPT without even reviewing what it actually said, type of thing. What are some things that you're seeing down there? What are just some tips that could help improve the search process, improve the real MLS, or what it actually is serving back?
So education is one thing. Take the classes, learn how to enter the information. We always have new products coming out, like a new one called Raise. If you haven't checked it out yet, it's in our MLS and our dashboard there. It's a really cool buyer thing. But education on new things coming out. Again, we had this data share that came out last year in the new FAR form, so there was a lot of education that went on. And so entering the more information, really the better, as long as it's accurate information. If you can put as much as you can in a listing description that's accurate and sounds good, great. If you want to measure every room and put that in as the size of the room, great. That's more data, the better, But you have to have a bare minimum of information, some like the required fields on Real MLS, and those are, of course, the standard of like square footage, bedroom, bath, general stuff like that. But just being a professional, getting your disclosures from your sellers, providing that information to them, Real MLS, and the more data, the better.
Well, I'm going to ask you more. I'm going to ask this more direct.
Okay.
Because you're doing listing descriptions for your own properties.
Yeah.
You know what you know. You're president of the Real MLS. You're using ChatGPT to help you be more articulate.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Then you edit it to sound like a voice of me.
Yeah. So walk us through, for that novice agent who, again, is just cutting and pasting, what are some of the things that you do in the steps of creating that listing description via ChatGPT and pasting it? Yeah.
So like, even before doing ChatGPT, I'd always kind of have this like perspective when I would write that listing description, for example. Like, who is going to use this house? Who is going to live here? Is it, investor, or is it going to be a homeowner? What are they going to do with this house? If there's a 3-car detached monster garage, maybe this house would be good for, someone who has a small landscaping company. Maybe it's good for someone who has like an RV, whatever these things.
Boat, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, boat, or whatever. Mm-hmm. And you try to build your description around some of those features of the house that deal with someone's lifestyle and what they want out of the house to do for them. A house is like a home, but it's also a thing that's going to function as a part of your life that fulfills whatever life needs you have, vacationing in your RV or boating or your landscape company, for example. And so I kind of take that perspective when I put in my prompts, ChatGPT, or I'm writing it myself even, is to take into account who's going to use it and how are they going to use it. And the ChatGPT helps with my grammar. But, it actually makes it sometimes a little too fluffy. I'm not that fluffy a dude. so I try not to over embellish it, but sometimes it can. So you got to tone it down a little bit when you use it. And it depends on which, ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini, whatever you're using, whatever voice it has to it,
Now, have you personally created a GPT for your listing, or are you just going in randomly in a chat?
No, I haven't created my own, no.
Okay.
No.
So for those who are listening, this is what I learned. This Carrie Sauvé, who I've had on the podcast, she's from Canada. She's an AI expert for EXP. She can train you on this and has it actually a GPT for you to use for you, already set up for you to do listing descriptions. But here's what I learned about ChatGPT. I wanted to create a GPT so that when I do a show, I don't have, I'll have a bunch of reels done, but I only will ask for the caption when I'm ready to post the reel. So what I did is I went into, first I asked in a chat, how do I create a GPT? It tells you how to create a GPT. And then you're going to sit there and initially go through everything that every listing description or every caption for Instagram, all the things I do. I want these links put in. I want the podcast link put in. I want the guest social media links. So someone sees that and they want to contact that, it's on there. And so I created that basically foundation. So now what I'll do with the material from this podcast is I will take it. I'll get which I've already started your GPT just for your show. What I thought at the beginning was I have my GPT is called Social Media Assistant for Real Estate Excellence Podcast, RE Podcast. That's what it's called. But you don't click on that every time. What I did is I clicked on it and it said, just like starting a new chat, I said, call this Ethan Gregory. So now Ethan Gregory is in my Chat GPT over here. So, but it is the GPT every time I click, because that's where I started it. And so it knows all this stuff because I've already preloaded. This is what I want on every one I do. Now I still have to go back and say, did you forget to do this? And it rewrites it for me, right? So if you're doing listing descriptions and want it to learn you create a GPT and say, this is for listing descriptions. And then when you go in and you start that new listing description, say, call this 123 Main Street. And everything you do about 123 Main Street, do in that GPT, and it'll start doing the way, because you're going to correct it, like you said, don't send so much fluff. So it'll start correcting itself. So then every time it spits out, it wants to please you and spit it out correctly. That's my little tip of the day, guys. I had to learn that through some trial and error. It's not that hard to create a GPT. Just go in there and do it. And since you guys are on there all the time, I know my wife uses it for everything. I've created. Was telling, so I had to get an underwriting exception. And so what I did is I went into ChatGPT and said, write an email to an underwriter because I need this exception, and here are the benefits and rather why I should get the exception and all that stuff. And it writes eloquently.
It's pretty cool to use.
Yeah. It's great for HR because that way you're not putting your emotions into it. It's a great filter. Great filter. Don't be so emotional. Be whatever. Right.
One cool thing I do on ChatGPT is there's the Sora, which is their image and video creation. You can take like a listing photo, right, that you've paid for. You have a professional photographer, and you can put it through there, and you can say make the trees blow in the wind and zoom in to the front door, and you need the aspect ratio to make sure it looks good on your phone. like a story or something. And so you just see that and it zooms in and leaves are blowing and it goes, 123 Main Street, So that's the one little cool tip for everybody out there.
So you some trial and error and you found that out.
It takes prompting correctly. It takes a little work to work it in, but it's pretty cool. It's an easy way to come up with a little social media content.
Yeah. We can go on and talk for hours.
Sure.
Let's finish up. Is there anything else? Did anything we not cover that we cover?
I'm here to serve you on this amazing podcast you guys
Thank
are doing.
you. Well, let's talk about, because I know Alan here is one of the, what do we call him? He's not on the board, but he's one of your committee members, I guess. What do they call it?
He's on the board of the directors. Yeah. It's like I'm not sure the
how
correct term,
many
but he's.
How many people volunteer though? You have the 4 or 5 board members, right? And then you have a bunch of support people.
There's 12 board members, I believe. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
The importance, as someone who's interested in participating in NEFAR, why they might come by and even talk to you, say, what's the benefit of, what can I add to the real MLS? What can they bring to the table to help it, as you guys are, an ever-changing, constant, things are thrown at you. What are the type of topics you guys are talking about? If someone's interested in being part of the real estate industry at a level, whether it's real MLS or one of the NEFAR things, what can they do at real MLS to add to the...
So large and small things. So some of the small things you can do, if you have a suggestion for MLS, please send it to suggestions@realmls.com. I mean, we'd love to get those. And if they're good, we can, talk about them and integrate them. We did focus groups recently from different groups, like brokers was one group, large, like high volume agents, and a couple different other ones. And we got some great ideas from there too.
Share with us something that came up.
So just, again, a small thing, like I can't remember her name, but she had this wonderful idea. And I don't know why we've never done it. Like if price changes, setting automatic price changes. Let's say you have it listed at $100,000, and if it's not pending within 17 days, you want the price to go down. So you could plug
set that in there.
Set that in there. How cool would that be, right? It seems easy. Why don't we do this already? And so that's just one small idea that came out of there. But you talk about some big things like integrating AI. That's a big lift. That's a big thing.
Yeah.
That's not something that we're going to take lightly or just quickly throw in there.
Right.
So we do have the board of directors, of course, but there's also, before that, we have our committees, like our technology committee, our policy committee, broker engagement committee. And so there's ways to be involved there, provide feedback and, again, information if you have ideas. Again, we'll take any good idea.
Is there any disciplinary, can someone, I know, obviously, I don't know, they don't call it disciplinary committee, but if someone complains about thinking someone's doing something unethical as a NEFAR, is there things that in a real MLS agents can get in trouble? Is there really?
Sure. So like NEFAR, of course, has the ethics and the grievance committee and stuff like that.
Yeah,
that's
grievance
kind of
committee.
kind of a different thing.
Yeah.
Ours is more technology and data related. So let's say you mark it as waterfront when it's not really waterfront. You made a mistake, right? You're going to get an email from MLS and our data integrity department. As well, your broker's going to get the email, and you have like 24 hours just to change it. Click the button.
Right.
It's not a big deal.
Right.
The only problem is if you don't change it, you just ignore it, and just don't do it. Well, then you might get a fine potentially. And those are kind of like the small things. And then there's also like big things that are just big no-nos that are like immediate fines, like putting broker compensation in the MLS. Don't do that. Nowhere in the MLS can that be. That's a big deal. You cannot do that. And we actually, since the implementation of that last year, not that many people have done it really. It's not really been a big problem. We've had a few people do it and they've corrected it, but it hasn't really that big an issue, quite honestly.
Yeah.
Surprisingly, I thought it would be more of a problem, and it wasn't. So kudos to Real MLS and NEFAR for educating our members on that. It's been awesome.
Amongst the many affiliates, I mean, even Landmark Title across the road here and so forth,
Yeah,
a lot of masterminds, and I went to some of them, and a lot of discussions between agents in the know. I know I went to one, and I had watched the Florida Realtors, the lawyer there that was, going through it, before the August date, and obviously Patty Ketchum, I have had her on and so forth. Yeah, so there was a huge collaboration in trying to educate as many agents as possible.
Yeah. And kind of mentioned it earlier, but I think, the market has evolved and changed, and real estate agents have figured it out, and they're educating their consumers, buyers and sellers, about how this works now. And I mean, maybe there's a little speed bump along the way when it first happened, but then it just kind of chugged along as regular. What's been really interesting about the compensation has been really market driven. I feel like, and I think that's going to be how it works is, are you bringing value to the transaction as an agent? Can you show that value to your customer? And are you worth that value? And your customer will think so or not. Just like if somebody walks in the store and thinks those bananas look good or not, am I willing to pay that much for bananas? But also, working with sellers, if you're asking the seller to pay some of the buyer's broker fee, then what's the market like? Has a seller have 10 offers? Maybe they're less negotiable on the buyer's broker fee versus if they haven't had an offer in 120 days. You know, like it's all just very market driven, which I think was, maybe not necessarily the goal of what some of the plaintiffs had there, but maybe it's been a good thing about how free markets work, in our capitalism world that we live in.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point there. I agree with you. I think and I think that's why one of the things I mentioned before the show, why some agents are thriving in the market right now, and some who were doing well are not doing so well. And I think part of it's stepping up and giving that value, how to sell it, or how to express it, how to communicate what they're going to do. The other agent may be doing the same thing, but they're not communicating, because you and I know there's a lot of things agents do that their customers never see, but it's being done.
To plug that a little bit, I mentioned earlier, it's a app on Real MLS that just came out recently called Raise. I would urge anybody working with buyers to start using RAYSE.
Okay.
And you can you put your buyer's information in there, and you can log like all the tasks you've done for them, like going over the buyer broker agreement, having a consultation with them, showing them homes, making offers. You can put in all the properties they viewed, and so what will happen, of course, the transaction, and the escrow, the inspections, everything you're doing. And so by the time you get to the end of the transaction, you can show them, hey, we looked at X amount of homes. I've done these 200 things for you. I've spent this much time on the phone with you. And I talked to you off the ledge once, like, all these things. And so it's a really great tool, like if you're working with buyers, to show your value to them. I mean, it's a really cool tool. We're one of the few markets across the nation. I think we're number 5 or something across the nation to start using this really cool tool. So I urge all of our members to get out there and take a look at this thing. It's really amazing.
Well, I've said it numerous times on the show. Agents need to have a notebook and track it, but obviously now they have Raise to do this, because you don't realize how much time you are spending. And, the experienced agent can probably go back in their network, but a newer agent starting today who's trying to budget their time and they're doing all these things, start going to be able to go back and review. Hey, what did I do? What could I not have done, or what could I have done better? What could I have foreshadowed up front that would have saved me hours over here? That whole sort of thing.
Cool. I didn't think about it that way, but it's almost like an agent accountability thing too. You're holding yourself accountable with this thing.
Just think of a football game, and you can go back and look at the video and say, we ran these plays. Next week we're not going to run those plays. Didn't get us anywhere. Especially when they're playing that defense. You know what I'm saying? But it's looking at the tape. It's looking at the video, and that's your video is going through and seeing where you're spending your time, where you save it. Because you and I know if you want to do 50 transactions in a year, you've got to be pretty efficient in some of the things you're doing, and if you want to go to bed at night, sometime. 100%. And finish with this. What is Real MS? Is there a project besides the transparency with the other MLSs? I guess that's kind of like an ongoing thing that the boards are working with other boards to make that happen. Is there any other big projects coming down the line to obviously stay on top of the technology?
Constantly, technology is always evolving. Like, for example, this Raise thing is brand new. Stay on top of AI when that integration could possibly come into place. The data share is a big deal. Personally, I care about that a lot. I think it's really just great for our marketplace and great for the statewide marketplace as well. And then also we have some new, we'll call it, I can't divulge too much about it, but essentially stats 2.0. Like, you get your normal stats of days on the market, bedrooms and baths.
Right.
We're going to be having some new tools come out. It may be next year by the time this product is ready to release. But it should be able to provide more real-time data, not always looking back 30 days. And so you'd be able to know kind of what's going on in your marketplace right now versus what's happened, 30, 60 days ago.
Yeah.
So we're really trying to dial it in.
Some agents say right now, when you can't look at a house that sold 60, 90 days ago, you got to look at one that sold 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
or what's listed around you right now and what price point.
Yeah, for example, like, concessions. I think if you look at single family homes, like half or a little over half of all single family homes are selling with some sort of seller concession. And that's due to affordability issues. And keeping up with what that is and the amounts that the concessions are for is super important. So if you want that real-time data, we're looking to move it in that direction. So that hopefully next year we'll have some products that'll be a little more up to date, and we're not always looking back.
Well, the real time data I think is important right now. Having sat some open houses with some agents and stuff, and talking about how they're pricing and staying rested. I had you gave me another thought there, but I'm going to forget it. It went through my mind, but where'd it go? It had to do with the technology, the importance of that, of being real time and making them better agents. As soon as I hit stop, it'll come to me. I appreciate you coming on today,
thank you,
Ethan. This is a great show. And anyone you want to know more about the Real MLS, what the board does, if you want to do something in the Real MLS is something you think you can, give input, to contact you or any other board members. You're all listed there on the site. Yeah. So it's Real MLS. Is it .org or .com?
I believe it's .com. Yeah. And so anybody that's looking to volunteer and give back to their industry. I mean, we would love to have you. Again, we're a technology and data company at Real MLS, and if you have like a passion for that kind of thing, if you care about it, or if you have a background in it, even, we'd love to have you. We always love differing viewpoints as well. You don't have to agree with everybody, but you can, as long as you're professional and provide good feedback, we really want it.
How often do the members change? When is there a certain part of the year where people can be nominated to be on there? How does that work?
Sure. So I believe where are we right now? We're in August. So they're 3-year terms. Like for the board of directors is 3-year terms. Committees, I believe, are for 1 year at a time. I believe I have to double check that. But I believe we've already gone through the nominating. That was a couple months ago, I think, that the voting happened for that. So if you're going to apply, I would say the spring of 2026. And I know that NEFAR and Real MLS are always looking for committee members. I think I saw NEFAR put one out, asking for applications for committee members. Probably the same thing with Real MLS as well. So listen, if you want to volunteer and you find a place that you really have a passion for, we will find a place to get you in there, and we will absolutely welcome you with open arms.
Right.
We're here to serve our members,
right.
And our members provide the best feedback. So
100%.
So we want them to participate if they can.
Appreciate you.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. Thank you, Tracy.
This may be it for today's episode of Real Estate Excellence, but we both know your pursuit of excellence doesn't stop here. To connect with the best of the best and really take your skills to the next level, join our community by visiting TracyHayesPodcast.com, where you'll meet more like-minded individuals looking to expand their inner circle and their personal experience. That's available at TracyHayesPodcast.com.